Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Gavinsky's Tutorials. Today I'm looking at Skaka by Klevgrand, which is a really clever and fun sequencer and sample player for shaken percussion. So we have 8 different types of percussive instruments here, things like eggs, kashishi, that's a Brazilian thing, single shot, calabash, it's a kind of gourd, shaker, tambourine, gungrus, that's those little bells that you see Indian women wearing around their ankles when they dance, seeds. So it's got these kind of things. And the really cool thing about Skaka is that we then have this sequencer built in where we can set down the velocity, the duration of the sounds. We can change the pitch of the sounds. We can change the gain. We've also got control over things like shuffle and humanize. So we also have reverb here as well. Now, it's a pretty straightforward app to use, to be honest, so I'm not really going to make this video a tutorial. Instead, I'm just going to give you some ideas for some creative things you could do with this, some cool app combinations, for example, that I find work very well with it. So that's going to be the focus on this video, rather than a detailed walkthrough as I normally do. Now, I have 3 copies of this to give away. In fact, the reason why I'm making this video so late is that when Klevgrand first released this, they didn't want to give away any codes for giveaways because the App Store limits developers to 100 codes per release, and they felt they had too many different codes to give away to various YouTubers and media people and so on. So I decided to leave my video for a while until they did an update and had some more codes again. So I've got 3 copies to give away, and all the details of how to win are in the pinned comment at the top of the YouTube comment section. And the winners will be announced 2 days after the release of this video. If you win, I'll send you a message in reply to your YouTube comment. But sometimes YouTube notifications are unreliable, so it is a good idea to maybe say 3 days from now, come and check back and look at the pinned comment, because I will edit that to put the winners' names. So you'll be able to see there if you won or not, just in case YouTube didn't send a notification to you when I reply to your comment. Okay, so let's first have a little listen to what we've got here. So we can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these percussive instruments being triggered. Now, what's the setup here then? This would be my first tip. Use Fugue Machine or another arpeggiator or some kind of MIDI generator with this. Works really, really well. So what we have here is 2 instances of Fugue Machine. So this one is sending its MIDI into Skaka here. All the playheads from Fugue Machine are going in here. This second Fugue Machine is sending its MIDI into this instance of Ting. Now, one thing we can do is, of course, if we want more shakers being triggered, all we have to do is enter more notes here. But you know, just because you can have 12 going at a time, it's really a bit unnecessary. I mean, if you think about a likely actual live setup with a band, you know, you might have maximum a couple of people doing percussion. So there's no need to overdo it, right? That's 3 or 4 sounds being triggered at a time is more than enough. You might even just want 1 sound. Now, another thing, of course, with something like Fugue Machine, if we change the key and the scale, then different notes are going to be triggered, because if we look at Skaka here, we can see that a C played on the keyboard or played by some MIDI instrument will trigger the shaker. A C sharp will trigger the tambourine, and so on and so on. So if we change the key and scale in Fugue Machine, we'll get different instruments in Skaka being triggered. Now, here is another tip. This is really cool with a resonator app like AAS Objeq. Thanks to Richard Yott from the AudioBus forum, by the way, for reminding us all how great a combination this is. See, in this case, Skaka is basically acting as an exciter for the resonator, and it really works well for that job. Let's have a little listen. So that's with no resonator. But there is delay and stuff on this. Take those off. Okay, let's put on the resonators again. So then we can play with a bunch of stuff here. You can see actually I've got an LFO doing some stuff to this. MIDI LFOs is modulating that very slightly. We could play with the pitch. Or the resonator type. So also really nice with a bit of delay. Here I'm using Delayrium. And here we have phase delay array. This is a free app, by the way. It's really cool. Now, another app that goes really well with something like this is Slowmo by 4 Pockets. So Slowmo is a way to slow down your beats, and something you can add reverse effects and things like that. Got a nice kind of trip-hoppy sort of a vibe. It doesn't work that well for all kinds of audio input. For example, play some sustained piano notes or something in, and then put on the slowdown effect. You often get some glitching or clicking, but it does work really well on percussion and drums. So let's have a listen to what that can sound like. So here I'm going to apply Slowmo to Skaka, and I'm not going to apply it to Ting. And you could, of course, apply it to Ting and not to Skaka, or you could apply it to both. But I think it works well. Let's let Ting keep the background, keep the backbone of the beat, and just let Skaka do its thing. Because I would say in this case Skaka is really what is accompanying Ting. Let's leave Ting unaltered and just bring in Slowmo on Skaka. Let's listen to what that's like. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, let's go on and look at some more ideas. See you in a second. So the thing that I want to look at now is something really cool, I think. I'm going to use Skaka to generate an envelope and send the information from that envelope from FAC Envolver by Fred Anton Corvest into a synth. In this case, I'm using NFM, and you can see a lot of stuff going wild here. These things like flanger, delay or feedback, and the rate and mix, as well as the distortion level of this FM synth, are being modulated by the envelope that Envolver is creating from Skaka's audio output, and I'll explain that in a second in more detail. Let's listen to what that can sound like. pretty cool. So let's talk about what's going on here. Okay, so first of all, both this instance of Skaka, which you were not hearing there, you can see that volume is pulled all the way down. You were not hearing it, but you're seeing it. What that is doing is it is altering, yeah, this is another thing that I set up, I forgot. So also the volume of this channel is being modulated there. So the volume is being modulated, and the things that we looked at in here already, these parameters with the flanger and the distortion. So how are we doing that? Okay, well, first of all, this instance of Skaka is getting MIDI from AUM destination, and the app piano motifs has been set to send out its MIDI to that AUM destination. So piano motif generates piano melodies, but here what I'm doing is using it to play Skaka. Let's listen to what that sounds like. So that's being played by piano motifs. This is also getting its audio from piano motifs. But we're using Envolver to modulate things. So let's look at how we set up Envolver to do that. So in Envolver, the first thing we do is set up our circuit type as follower, not a gate. Set it up as a follower, and then I'm using this second instance, and I'm sending the envelope out as MIDI, and I'm sending it on channel 2, CC2. Doesn't really matter what you use. So sending it out on CC2. Now, if we go here, how do we set up NFM to get this information? So at the bottom of the AUM channel, we click here, and we click on this MIDI sources, FAC Envolver. Yes, selected. Okay, volume. So volume, see, set up channel 2, CC2, and I have set the range. This is a very important aspect. I've set the range from 25% to 97%. So not the whole range, because I don't want it to go completely into silence. That wouldn't sound as good. It is useful to experiment with your settings here. Okay. So then in NFM, we click on parameters and go to distortion, for example. So you can see, again, it's getting channel 2, CC2 information, and the range I've set as this. Okay, flanger. So delay, rate, and mix are all getting information. And again, I've set different ranges. So delay range of 0 to 36. I just played around with these things and tried to find what sounded good to my ear. So that just makes this, it just makes this so much more interesting. It's got this lovely rhythmic quality. And then we can put in our drums and whatever over the top. Now, the second Skaka instance here, which I did have the volume of up a minute ago. Let's see where it's getting its data from. So it is getting it from chord pads. Now, that is this chord pad here, which is one of the audio unit that comes from the app Tonality, which is a really, really useful little app. So what I've done here is I often, if I have an instrument that I want to trigger with notes, sometimes I use the AUM keyboard, but the disadvantage there is that you've only got one keyboard, and the information, I think, does not always get saved from session to session, what's been played on the keyboard. Can't remember. Anyway, I always found that chord pads is a much more elegant solution than using the AUM keyboard. So what I do here is I get confused actually after this latest update. Sometimes, yeah, something changed there. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just playing 5 notes in as a custom chord in tonality. So then these notes are latched. If I go back out to play here, you can see here I've pulled this latch button over. So what I do when I come back into this session, that chord is just saved there, and I just press here to trigger that, and then it will be latched. Let's listen to what that's like. So that's this. So Envolver actually is something that I have really neglected until now, and this was really the first time that I've actually used it. It's one of those apps, I'm sure you've got many of these yourself. Maybe in your early days of getting into iOS music making, you got apps because people said, okay, this is brilliant, this is a game changer, etc., etc. Then you got it and just didn't really have the first clue how to use it. And then it just ended up sitting there neglected for ages. So I'll fully admit, when I got Envolver, I really didn't understand how to use it. It was really beyond my current, at that time, level of understanding of iOS and MIDI and things like that. Now I understand how to use it. It's extremely cool tool. Extremely cool tool. Okay, let's move on and look at using the MuteMaster app by AAS to see what we can do with that, with Skaka. I'll see you in a second. So AAS, i.e. numerical audio, has this cool app called MuteMaster that we can basically use to sequence muting effects in different channels. Now, I'm not going to make this a tutorial on that, but I will look just briefly at how to set that up. So let's listen first to what's happening here. What you're going to see is that I've got 3 channels. So this channel here, channel 1, that's playing Skaka. Second one is also playing Skaka, and the third one is playing Ting. And I've got an instance of MuteMaster on each one. So first thing, just pay attention to the lights at the bottom so you can see which channels are producing sound and when they fade out. Now, a lot of the time the fades will not be immediate because I've set it as a gradual fade rather than a cut. And we'll talk about how to do that in a second. This is what that can sound like. The point of doing this is just to have several instances going and alternate between them to keep variety, keep things more interesting. So we can see here that at the moment channel 3 and 1 are being played. Now it's channel 2 and 3. You see it's changing all the time. Again, you can see that I've got a channel fade set up here. So that's what it's like without fade. It's an immediate cutoff. This is with fade. So if you notice there, in all of the patterns I've set up here, channel 3 is being kept going the whole time. So I'm only alternating between channel 1 and channel 2, the two instances of Skaka. So let's just look very quickly at how we do that. Basically, we load 3 instances of MuteMaster onto the channels that we want to control. In this case, actually, I don't really need to set up 3. If I just want to keep Ting going the whole time, then I can just set it up on 2 channels. But I think initially when I set this up, I wasn't sure. I thought I might want to mute Ting at times, but just looking at it, I remember now that I didn't do that in the end. So we could just as easily have 2 channels here. So if we look at this one here, you can see this one is set to channel 1. This instance is set to channel 2. And this instance is set to channel 3. So I then set up different patterns here. You can see it's switching around pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 3. So in pattern 1, only channel 3 is being triggered. In pattern 2, we have 3 and 1. And in pattern 3, we have channel 3 and channel 2 being triggered. This is the source of this pattern is the divide section over here. If we look at the divide section, it is being triggered by the BPM. We can set different divisions here to change the speeds at which it will switch between patterns. So again, as I said, I'm not going to make this a tutorial on this app. And just to look very quickly, give you an initial idea, if you're not familiar with this app, of one possible way to set it up. We could use different things. We could use this probability knob, for example, to calculate the probability of a change in pattern. We could use the chance section and so on. We could change around the sequence divisions and use the sequencer. A lot of different stuff we could do there. Okay, let's look at something else. So we're getting near the end of the video now. I want to look at using a looper like Gauss or Enzo, we could also equally well use, to play around with speed and reverse effects. So let's see, I played a 4-bar loop into Gauss. Let's hear what it sounds like. So this is reversed. This is the original loop. With a bit of delay on it. Take the delay off for a second. So we can really slow things down. And we can start to get into kind of sound effect territory there. We can reverse things, which can be pretty cool. We could then, of course, if we wanted, apply the trigger sequencer to make our rhythms even more complex. And we could pitch things. So yeah, I really enjoy playing around with these things reversed and stuff like that. Let's go and check out one more thing using Looperator, or you could use some other filter effects and things like that. Let's take a look at Looperator. So I made a video on Looperator before. It's an extremely deep effect, but you only need to go as deep as you want to go, really, because it does come with a lot of cool presets. So You can always just experiment and you'll find something that'll work for you in the presets. Let's just get a couple of examples. Try some stutter effects. So Replicant by Audio Damage is another effect that works very well with this. Also Tone Boosters Dual VCF filter. Let me let you hear those quickly. So let's just have a little listen here first. So we have Dual VCF Transient Enhancer preset. Drum computer. Sample from Zvon memory pack. Going into tap.
Crime, even when it starts with comics, always winds up in tragedy to the criminals. You see, crime, even when it starts with comics, always winds up.
Love what Replicant's doing here. Of course, Replicant is something you could always try adding to an instance of Skaka. All right, so a few ideas for you there. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.